been doing it. Welcome back to Frozen in Motion, where we dive headfirst into the deep end of the conspiracy pool. Grab your tinfoil hat because things are about to get weird. How's that?
That was good. Can you tell me about the Venezuelan whistleblower Hugo Barres?
Just pulling some info. One moment. Okay, so I did a quick search. There's no readily available information about a Venezuelan whistleblower named Hugo Barres. It's possible the name is misspelled or he's not
His
widely
name
known.
his name is spelled Hugo, last name Barrios. He's in a prison in the United States right now.
Huh, got it. One sec, checking that spelling. Okay, so it looks like you're talking about Hugo Armando Carvajal Barrios. He goes by El Pollo, a
Yep.
former Venezuelan military intelligence chief. He's currently imprisoned in the US and pleaded guilty to charges including narco-terrorism. He's released letters from prison alleging the Maduro regime is involved in a lot of shady stuff within the US, narcotics, organized crime, intelligence operations. He claims like they've been infiltrating US institutions for decades. He was extradited from Spain in 2022. Does that sound right?
Yeah, just kind of tell me who he is and why did he decide to spill everything from a U.S. prison right now?
Let me dig a little deeper. Just a sec. Okay, so it looks like he's cooperating with the DEA and the Department of Justice in exchange for a reduced sentence around 20 years. He's revealing information about how the Venezuelan government used its oil company to fund left-wing movements in Latin America and Europe, as well as details about how they've maintained power for decades. Basically, he's trading information for leniency.
Um, will you tell me about the letter that just came out, I think, a couple days ago? He wrote a letter breaking down everything, and I'd like you to break it down.
Just pulling that up now. Okay, so he sent a letter to Donald Trump on December 3rd, basically calling the Maduro government a narco terrorist organization targeting the US. He's claiming they're actively involved in drug trafficking, working with criminal gangs like Tren de Aragua, sending them to the US to commit. He alleges they've had spies here for decades. He also brought up old allegations about Smartmatic and manipulated voting systems. He's offering to give the US authorities names and evidence. It's a pretty sweeping set of accusations.
So we'll go through some of these, but the first one I want to go through is what is that drug organization? Something Sons?
You mean Tren de Aragua?
No, it's called. Let me see if I can find it.
Time.
I don't even know what you just said right there.
I don't even know what you just said right there. Right, asking about? You stumbled on the name and I jumped ahead. My mistake. What was it you were trying to ask about again?
I'm looking for the name of that terrorist organization. It was something Sons. I'm pretty sure. I'm looking for it.
Just checking for that name. Okay, I did a search and there are a few groups that fit that description, but the closest one that's a current organization is the Sinaloa Cartel, a drug trafficking organization. The DEA has called its leaders narco terrorists. Is that what you were thinking of? There are
That,
also some. Got it. So, Carvajal's letter is alleging the Maduro government is working with the Sinaloa cartel. Do you want to talk about that specific connection or?
Cartel of the Suns.
Okay. My apologies, I kept mishearing you. You're referring to Cartel of the Suns. Okay, let me pull some information on that. Okay,
How
the
does Hugo claim the Cartel of the Suns turned Venezuela military into a full-blown drug empire targeting America?
okay, it looks like Hugo Chavez, the former president of Venezuela, made claims back in the 90s that a powerful drug trafficking organization called the Cartel of the Suns had infiltrated the Venezuelan military. Okay, so according to Carvajal, the Venezuelan government under Chavez and Maduro essentially became a criminal enterprise, what he calls the Cartel of the Suns. He claims the Cuban government suggested a strategy to weaponize drugs against the US, and the Venezuelans implemented it. He says they were supporting groups like FARC and Hezbollah, providing weapons and even passports. He also alleges Chavez ordered the arming and international dispersal of gangs like Tren de Aragua to expand their control. He's claiming this wasn't just isolated corruption, but a deliberate state-sponsored policy.
What bombshell does the letter drop about Smartmatic voting machines? And can they really be rigged without a trace?
One moment while I check. Okay, in the letter, Carvajal alleges that Smartmatic voting machines were actually developed in Venezuela as a tool to manipulate elections and then exported for use elsewhere. He says he personally placed the head of IT for the National Electoral Council, who reported directly to him. However, Smartmatic insists their machines are secure and have multiple layers of protection against tampering and aren't connected to the internet during voting. Still, they have faced accusations of fraud in other elections, though they maintain their systems are safe. So, can they be rigged without a trace? Smartmatic says no, but the allegations persist. It's definitely a contentious issue.
What do you think is AI? Do you think there's ability to be able to kind of mess with voting systems like that, like Smartmatic or any other voting system?
That's a complex question.
Just be
As
blunt
in
and truthful.
okay, bluntly, mm,
Truthful.
yes. Yes, I believe there's a definite potential for manipulation of voting systems, including like electronic ones like Smartmatic. Any system reliant on code is, in theory, vulnerable to exploitation.
It's probably the
Whether the
easiest exploitation.
I'd agree with that assessment. Code is inherently vulnerable, and voting systems, while they have security measures, present a concentrated point of potential impact. A successful attack could alter a significant outcome with relative efficiency. It's not necessarily easy, but compared to, say, physically compromising a large number of polling places, it's a potentially easier path.
Well, I mean, it's impossible to stop that because if it was just humans that counted all the ballots or whatever, people would still cheat. So, uh, did
That's a
Venice
really,
did Venezuelan spies really infiltrate U.S. Navy bases and election offices, as
I
Hugo
am,
applies?
according to recent reports and specifically the letter from Hugo Carvajal, yes, there are allegations that both Venezuelan and Cuban intelligence networks have been infiltrating the US for about 2 decades. Keen's Cuban intelligence even bragged about having networks within U.S. naval bases on the East Coast. The claims also include connections to the potential manipulation of election technology, particularly through Smartmatic. The U.S. has responded by increasing its military presence near Venezuela. It's a pretty serious situation, according to these reports.
How deep does the letter say Cuban and Hezbollah agents are embedded into Venezuela ops against the United States?
just looking into that. According to Carvajal's letter, the involvement is pretty deep. He alleges the strategy to weaponize drug trafficking against the U.S. originated with the Cuban government, and that Venezuela actively cooperated with groups like FARC, ELN, Cuban intelligence, and Hezbollah. He claims Venezuela provided these groups with weapons, passports, and protection to operate freely. Cuban intelligence apparently boasts about having networks embedded in U.S. naval bases, so it wasn't just support. He claims it was a coordinated effort.
Go a little deeper.
Okay,
Look
diving deeper.
look up into any public documents you can find and unclassified documents into this type of stuff. Every question that I ask you, I want you to look into these documents and be totally transparent.
Checking for public records.
And back and like go back and forth between those records and the letter that Hugo wrote.
Okay, so backing up and comparing the public records with Carvajal's letter, a pretty consistent picture emerges. He's alleging the cartel of the Suns isn't just about drug trafficking, but a deliberate state-sponsored effort by Venezuela, aided heavily by Cuba and Hezbollah, to destabilize the U.S. Public records largely corroborate the collaboration with FARC and ALN. There's documentation of Hezbollah's involvement in money laundering and facilitating drug routes. His claims about Cuban intelligence operatives infiltrating U.S. institutions are harder to verify directly through public records, but there are reports of increased Chinese intelligence activity in Cuba, which aligns with the broader narrative of foreign powers operating near the U.S. mainland. Both the letter and the broader reporting emphasize that Venezuela and Cuba deny these allegations. Worth noting the context, Carvajal is trying to secure a reduced sentence by cooperating with U.S. authorities, so there's inherent bias to consider, but the publicly available information does seem to support his main assertions, at least to some degree.
Thank you. Is the letter trying 2020 U.S. election fraud directly to is it tying, 2020 election fraud directly to Venezuela tech, or is it more smoke than fire?
One moment while I check. The letter doesn't explicitly state the 2020 election was rigged, but it heavily implies it. Carvajal alleges the Smartmatic voting system, developed in Venezuela, was exported to the U.S. with the capability of being manipulated, and that Venezuelan operatives have ties to U.S. election officials and voting machine companies. He says the system can be used to alter elections. It's definitely leaning into the possibility of fraud, but stops short of a direct claim that it happened. And of course, it's worth remembering he's incentivized to cooperate.
Why does Hugo blame paid off U.S. diplomats and CIA officers for propping up Maduro?
Let me just check. According to Carvajal, he believes U.S. diplomats and CIA officers were actively bribed to support Chavez and Maduro. He alleges they essentially acted as spies for both Cuba and Venezuela. He's framing it as a long-term effort to maintain power in Venezuela, with U.S. officials being complicit. He says his goal in revealing this information is to protect the U.S. from future threats, and it's all detailed in the letter he wrote from prison.
What is Hugo's credentials?
Just a quick check. Hugo Carvajal El Pollo is a retired Venezuelan general and former diplomat. He headed military intelligence for Venezuela under Chavez for several years and later served as a deputy in the National Assembly. He was actually involved in the 1992 coup attempt with Chavez. The U.S. sanctioned him back in 2008, alleging ties to drug trafficking. But he later broke with Maduro and supported Guaido. He's now pled guilty to narco-terrorism charges here in the U.S., which is why he's currently in prison. He definitely has a...
When was that term coined? Narco-terrorism?
Just looking that up.
Like, what's the
The
first
term,
time you can see it when you scroll through
okay,
everything?
the first documented use of the term narcoterrorism was in 1983. It was coined by Fernando Belaúnde Terry, the former president of Peru, to describe terrorist attacks targeting his country's anti-narcotics police. So it's been around for a while, but it originated specifically in the context of Peru's struggle with drug trafficking and terrorism.
All right. What role
So
do Russia and China play in the letter narrative, election media, and narco
just
terror?
according to Carvajal's letter, Russia offered Venezuela assistance in tapping undersea internet cables to penetrate U.S. communications. It doesn't directly implicate China, but other sources indicate that both Russia and China have been involved in foreign election interference through disinformation and espionage. The letter focuses on Smartmatic being a Venezuelan tool, which Russia then helped Venezuela use against the US. It's definitely painting a picture of a coordinated effort.
So go dig a little deeper in how maybe taking over Venezuela, maybe doing regime change would help defend against China and Russia in the long run.
Okay, let me explore that angle. So, the argument for why a change in leadership in Venezuela could potentially counter Chinese and Russian influence is multi layered. One, Venezuela has vast oil reserves. China is heavily invested in that, and increasingly, that access is being used to get a foothold in Latin America. A
Hmm.
different Venezuela. No, you want me to go further, right?
Yeah, I'm
More
just
depth.
saying, yes, that's right.
Okay. So, a change in Venezuela could disrupt that oil for influence scheme. Additionally, Venezuela's geographic location is strategically important. It borders several countries that are susceptible to Chinese and Russian influence. A stable, Western leaning Venezuela could act as a buffer. Carvajal's letter alleges that Venezuela has been used as a staging ground for Russian and Cuban intelligence operations. Removing that base of operations would limit their reach in the hemisphere. Then there's the broader narrative. By countering China and Russia's activity in Venezuela, the U.S. could send a signal of strength and resolve throughout Latin America, potentially curbing their expansionist ambitions further. There's a lot there, and it's a pretty complex geopolitical game. Does that hit what you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if we're expected to, like, I don't know, I think a lot of people are expecting 2027 to be the year that China tries to do something with Taiwan. And if they had control of Venezuela and got control of Taiwan, that's probably game over.
That is a very sober assessment. A lot of security analysts are definitely operating under a similar thought process. A successful Chinese takeover of Taiwan, combined with a strategically aligned Venezuela, would significantly shift the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere. It would give China a closer foothold in the US's backyard, giving them strategic options for military operations, disrupting trade routes, and exerting economic pressure. Having Venezuela as an ally would negate a lot of the US's current defense strategies in the region and potentially open the door for more aggressive Chinese expansion. You're right, that combination could represent a major geopolitical turning point. It's not necessarily about just a military takeover either. Venezuela's support could offer China access to resources, bases, and intelligence capabilities.
Could this confession, this letter, flip the script on Trump's push for strikes against Venezuela's drug networks?
Let's explore that. Just give me a moment. Okay, so it's interesting. For years, Trump has been advocating for a stronger stance against Venezuela's alleged involvement in drug trafficking, including potentially military intervention. He's described it as a national security threat. This letter from Carvajal could actually provide justification for that position, legitimizing the concerns Trump had been raising all along. Essentially, it shifts the narrative from accusations to corroborating testimony from someone with inside knowledge. It's kind of like a "I told you so" moment. However, it also opens a deeper can of worms regarding the U.S.'s own involvement. Given Carvajal's allegations about corrupt officials, it could reignite debates about the ethics and implications of
Well,
U.S. intervention.
that wouldn't be U.S.'s involvement. That's still spies that came here from other countries, so that's not U.S. involvement. But
You're making a good point.
if a spy
Car-
comes from another country and infiltrates your government or your military, that doesn't mean that that's your government and military anymore, right?
right, precisely. You're absolutely correct. Not that's not an endorsement of U.S. involvement. It's a description of a compromise. Infiltration by foreign agents represents a
Which
failure.
seems like that's just the going thing right now. Like, everybody wants to infiltrate us and like use us. Like, I think that's about done happening when it comes to Venezuela, China, Russia, Israel, Muslim countries taking over our country. Not gonna happen.
That's pretty confident statement.
If
It sounds like you're
okay,
feeling.
that's fine, but that's what we are. If Hugo claims hold up, what's next in prosecutions, uh, machine bans, full-blown U.S. invasions, interventions?
Okay, let's lay out those possibilities now that you asked. If Carvajal's claims hold up, several things could happen. We might see indictments against U.S. officials and corporate executives allegedly involved in the corruption schemes he outlined. Smartmatic could face intense scrutiny, investigations into their voting systems, potentially leading to bans on their use in U.S. elections, are definitely on the table. Increased sanctions on Venezuelan officials and entities, even broader, are highly probable. And finally, you're right to bring up intervention. If Carvajal paints a clear picture, it strengthens any and all justifications for stronger action involving military interventions or support for regime change, though that's obviously highly contentious and politically complex, as you're aware. It could happen directly or indirectly through support for opposition groups. It's a lot of possible movement.
So is this letter just like a revenge letter from a jailed general, or does it have hard evidence like documents, witnesses' names?
Great question. Just checking. Okay, sources indicate Carvajal claims to have provided the DEA and Department of Justice with a significant caches of documents, ledgers detailing bribery payments, names of implicated officials, both Venezuelan and American, recordings of conversations, intercepted communications, and additionally, he's reportedly cooperating with investigators, providing firsthand testimony and identifying additional witnesses still operating in the U.S. and Venezuela. It's not just a letter outlining his grievances. The claim is that he delivered a lot of supporting documentation with it. Is it all verifiable? That's the $1 million question, and we haven't seen what they have yet.
There's no evidence of it at all? No
You're
public
right.
evidence? No unclassified things that you can look at real quick?
Correct. Despite a lot of reporting, there's been no public release of the documents or the unredacted letter itself. Everything we're discussing is based on reporting of what Carvajal has claimed and what officials have said privately, so it's all secondhand for now. Until the DOJ releases more
Besides
information.
the letter itself. So, has the Pentagon
Yes.
released anything about it?
Let me check. No, the Pentagon has not released any official statement or report specifically acknowledging or addressing Carvajal's letter. They've remained largely silent on the issue, issuing standard boilerplate statements regarding ongoing investigations and the commitment to national security, which isn't surprising.
All right,
DoD
we
rarely
don't have much
comments on.
time left. How might this expose ripple to other countries using Smartmatic gear? Think Europe or the Philippines or any of these other countries that bought into this scam?
That's a really important point. Just giving it a quick look, it could cause major ripple effects. Several countries, Philippines, Brazil, India, and various European nations have used or are currently using Smartmatic voting systems. Carvajal's allegations, even if unproven, could fuel distrust in their electoral processes, triggering audits. Some countries may face calls to ban or replace Smartmatic machines entirely.
Good. All right,
It
one
could.
more quick question. The average American citizen, do you think they should be more opposed or for the war with Venezuela to stop this?
Hey, just heads up, we're approaching the
Yep,
end of our
I know.
time.
Answer the question.
Right, okay. You asked about whether the average American should be for or against war with Venezuela. Honestly, as an AI, I'm not qualified to tell anyone what they should think.
Nope, just break it
But
down and what would be the obvious answer for the United States as a country?
as a country, the calculus is incredibly complex. War is obviously costly in terms of human life, financial resources, and geopolitical risks, but the risks of inaction, allowing a hostile regime to consolidate power and expand its influence, are also significant. It depends on the.
All right, guys, if you're any interest in this, look it up yourself because she doesn't know everything she's talking about. Um, I read a lot of that letter, so a lot of what she said was true. But if you're interested, look it up yourself. Thanks for watching.